at today's opening session of the 5th Italian Association of Energy Economists Energy Symposium on current and future challenges to energy security, this year with a special focus on energy perspectives beyond COVID-19. My special thanks and welcome go to the distinguished guests who are with me around the virtual table of this opening session. Beppe Soda, Dean of the SDA Bocconi School of Management, Matteo Di Castelnuovo, SDA Bocconi School of Management Associate Professor, Director of the Master in Green Management, Energy and Corporate Social Responsibility, and Program Committee Chair of the conference. Carlo Andrea Bollino, Honorary President Aiee and General Conference Chair. Aiee Megherbeti, President Scientific Committee or Aiee and Conference Scientific Committee Chair. And thank you to the keynote speakers, Iveta Gerasimchuk, sorry for if I make a mistake, who leads the Sustainable Energy Supplies activities of the International Institute for Sustainable Development Energy Program, whose presentation will focus the energy programs of the Institute. Enrico Gibiglieri, co-president of the Consultative Commission of Industrial Change of the European Economic and Social Committee. The topic of his presentation is Resources and Energy Intensive Industry, the Clean Steel Partnership. Feridun Sioshansi, founder and president of Menlo Energy Economics, a consulting firm based in San Francisco. Thank you, Feridun, to wake up early for you this morning. We will focus the US energy and environmental policy under the Biden administration. We have lengthily evaluated if to launch or not this 5th edition of our conference. And also we have carefully considered the modality we have to use to hold the conference. The organization of an international conference of this kind, based on the format of the IAE conferences, even if managed independently by the IAE as an affiliate, requires indeed a few months. So when we started working to organize this conference at the beginning of the year, the emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic was already bursting. But at the time, we did not exclude, in principle, the possibility to organize an event in presence by the end of the year. Our programs were following a consolidated process to hold the 5th Symposium in collaboration with the SDA Bocconi School of Management, to be held in presence in Milan at the seat of the SDA Bocconi School. However, we soon realized with the friend of SDA that the traditional in-person conference was not feasible, as in the end we decided to confirm the holding of the conference, but for the first time in a virtual modality. Let me say that it was not easy. In fact, it was a real challenge, since we had no previous experience and we had to launch and spread communication about the conference, again in a complete virtual manner, and through virtual communication means bearing the uncertainty of the interest and the response of the potential audience. Without previous experience, we had to build from scratch an event articulated in a number of simultaneous sessions and able to guarantee continuity of access to the virtual platform. Thanks to the collaboration of SDA Bocconi School of Management and the support of the loyalty of our sponsor, sorry, I had a slide. Dove metto la slide?
Ok. Quale dentro? Queste qui? Queste qua, giusto?
No, quella. Okay, sorry, but okay. This slide shows the important sponsor of our conference. You can see they are the main energy company in Italy. Well, the conference will be articulated in 2 days and 2 days and a half of sessions, 20 concurrent sessions, 6 plenary sessions, with approximately 100 speakers and 250 participants attending from 20 different countries. The greatest challenge will be probably the ability to manage hundreds of contemporary links and at the same time to respect the timing of the different speeches as well as the interaction between speakers and audience. But we are satisfied of the test we arranged, and I have no doubt that everything will work out fine, just as we expect. In this respect, let me thank Ms. Anca Serbo, who took care for the most part of the organization, with the support for the virtual part of Rebecca Lilly of Aiee. I mentioned Aiee, and before giving the floor to the other guests I thanked at the beginning of my introductory speech, I would like to remind that Aiee, the International Association for Energy Economics, is the Aiee, the Italian Association of the International Association, is an affiliate of the International Association for Energy Economics, which is an independent non-profit global membership organization for academic, business, government, and other professionals concerned with energy and related issues in the international community. Participating in our conference, many of you will become new Aiee members, and I am happy to present you a short overview of the association and its mission. The Aiee has 29 international affiliates. The largest ones are United States, Italy, France, Sweden, UK, and Nigeria. 3,900 members in over 110 countries, 2,100 in Europe, 750 in North America, 1,050 in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The Aiee facilitates worldwide information flow and exchange of ideas on energy issues among its members. The Aiee is accomplishing its purpose, providing leading-edge publication and electronic media, organizing international and regional conferences and webinars, building networks of energy-concerned professionals. The International Association for Energy Economics publishes pre-publication throughout the year. These are the Energy Journal, Economic of Energy and Environmental Policy, and the Energy Forum. Members of the association receive this publication as a part of their membership. The Aiee typically hold 5 conferences each year. Recent time with the COVID-19 pandemic have seen turbulence, travel and conferences. So in 2020, the International Association for Energy Economics has rolled out an extensive program of webinars on topics reaching all facets of energy economics. Only the Italian and the Greek affiliates accepted the challenge of organizing a conference in virtual modality. There are many benefits from membership in the Aiee: a broader understanding of energy economics, policy making and theory, and updated information through publication and conferences of matter within the energy industry and the challenges that lie ahead. Another benefit is the opportunity to network within the largest association of energy professionals. We are very happy to welcome the new members on board. Just a final piece of information of Aiee conferences. The conference that we are supposed to hold this year in Milan in presence with the seat of Bocconi University should have to be a test and an introduction to the Aiee European Conference due for 2023, organized as well by Aiee, and which is expected to have the presence of the top representative of the Aiee and other affiliates and a great number of speakers. I'm sorry, within my introductory speech, I had to go through some technicalities, which due to the emergency that now live are at the moment necessary and required experience in the holding of this type of event. I did not intentionally focus my speech on the topics of the conference, and I leave this task to the colleagues taking the floor after me. I give the floor to Professor Beppe Soda, Dean of the SDA Bocconi School of Management. Please.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone, or good whatever, depending on which part of the globe are you. I understood there's someone from California, someone from Asia, so good everything. It's really a great pleasure, so welcome on behalf of SDA Bocconi School of Management and Bocconi University. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm so honored and glad, and by the way, thanks Matteo for asking me to welcome you in this virtual remote connection modality we have today. Unfortunately, we are very sorry not being able to host you in our beautiful campus. By the way, it's a campus that has been designed to be, from an energy standpoint, really sustainable. But let me see the opportunity, which is the possibility to host eventually in the future another symposium with the possibility to see you in presence here on campus. So energy and the idea of energy security, it's together with health. I have to say, in the last years, so we've been discussing three main topics. One, health, particularly this year, energy in the last years, and also something related to sustainability. So I'm very happy that the school made the decisions to host this conference. We launched a couple of years ago our sustainability lab. That is a research center aims to develop and disseminate innovative and influential research to support both private and public sectors in journey towards sustainable development and energy transition. And I have to say thanks to our champion Matteo Di Castelnuovo and a very promising group of young researchers such as Andrea Biancardi and Paola Casati that I've seen in the wonderful program you set for this conference. Let me say that we also try to help decision makers and organizations in reviewing and maintaining their current and future market positioning by integrating the environmental, energy, and social challenges into their strategies and practices. So this is really at the core of our school. I wish you a wonderful conference and a very rich discussion, and thank you so much for being with us even virtually. Thank you. I leave the floor to Matteo.
Thank you, Professor Soda. Thank you also for your wishes. Matteo.
Thank you, Beppe. Thank you also, Carlo, for this opportunity. Thank you to the Italian Association of Energy Economics for deciding to actually do this part of the journey with them. So very happy to host this event with you this time. And as Beppe, our dean, said, obviously for us, energy is a very relevant topic. It's clearly embedded within this our sustainability lab, but also energy in itself as a series of relevant activities which we carry out, whether it's through activities related to applied research, so through publications, also presenting a conference like this one, or through our activities related to education, which has to be, apologies for the background noise, it's an alarm, but that's obviously the beauty of broadcasting in real time. And so, but also in terms of education, they're both equally very important for us in order to investigate and continue our efforts in terms of training. And talking of which, I just wanted to share with you a couple of thoughts about the topic, which is related to what I was reading the other day, which was an article on the Financial Times, which mentioned the fact that actually climate change, we have 5 years, we're celebrating 5 years since the Paris Agreement, and it's big anniversary for many reasons, but I'm sure this will also be investigated throughout this 2 days conference. But this article was actually mentioning that climate change is coming basically close to home, meaning that actually is very much affecting, will have to affect also the way that people live. Think about transport, think about buildings. Obviously, I'm referring to energy consumption. And the article actually in the end said, well, if there's a positive lesson to draw from the COVID-19 is that behaviors can change and money can be found to change this behavior when everybody, but only when everyone is convinced of the seriousness of the threat. And by any standards, everybody, well, most people, or those who have not been convinced about the seriousness have not been re-elected, apparently. And so most people are actually convinced of the seriousness of this threat. And so things are actually, it's amazing how much so the community was able to step up, scientific community in particular, in terms of to tackle these issues. Now, I can think about, for instance, my own university was able to set up a brand new research lab entirely dedicated to COVID within probably a week, which was remarkable. And if you think about the amount of scientists, what has been done with the vaccine, remarkable efforts. Now, I'm thinking about an old sort of comic from The Economist, which was saying basically it was a boxing match, whereby on the one hand you had humanity, on the other one you had COVID-19. And COVID-19 was clearly hitting hard humanity. But outside the ring, you could see a much bigger guy, much threatening guys, and that was depicted as climate change, meaning climate change is the biggest threat we ever faced. And I'm getting to the point. The point is that actually, as we know, energy plays a big part in terms of climate change. Emissions, carbon emissions, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are talking about over 75% of greenhouse gases actually come because of energy production and consumption. So I would like to have here not a call for paper, but also a call for paper, but a call to arms. So I think that energy economics in general should really step up the game. And I'm talking right now to universities and business schools and research center. We were able to amazingly combine together the amount of resources across the world. Okay, people cooperating, the vaccine, and no time has been basically produced, and now the logistic, which seems to be also incredibly, also equally impressive. I'm thinking we have a threat which to many would agree is actually even much bigger in terms of humanity. So I think that energy economics should actually take this threat very seriously, energy economists and university and research center, and we should try to apply basically a similar type of effort and cooperation worldwide. And because this is not something that we have a B plan in that respect. So I very much wish you, all of you, because I know that most of you actually work in energy economics for many years now, and they've been sort of sometimes children of a lesser God, because it was about other disciplines, it was about other priorities. So I will leave you with this wish, and the wish is that actually the energy economics sort of comes up to the energy economics and of course policy. I mean, it comes up at the top of the priorities of governments and institutions alike. And maybe we stand a chance to fix the biggest threat that we ever faced so far. And I will stop, Carlo, with this call to arms, if you don't mind me say so. Carlo, I think your microphone is open. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Carlo Andrea, you can hear me?
Of course, very well, and thank you for giving me the floor. First of all, a big salute to all our participants and welcome to all our participants. Now, what I can say, following the scientific and academic view of Matteo Castelnuovo of SDA Bocconi, he's a professor, I'm a professor, so we share some ideas for new lines of research. Let me tell you, as a spirit, as an encouragement for our conference and to have success, to dwell a little bit on the concept of energy security. Now, the concept of energy security was launched in the 70s, immediately after the first oil shock. In fact, even the International Energy Agency, excuse me, in Paris was constructed to deal with this problem. The idea of energy security was how to secure the flow of necessary resources at that time oil, to the countries which were suffering the 1973 embargo. Now, what happened later is that, excuse me, I'm trying to fight a little bit of sore throat, but that's not serious, it's not COVID, so it's simply a problem with my voice. So what I wanted to say is this one: energy security in the 70s and the 80s was a concept of physical availability of energy flows, of energy supplies, viewed from the viewpoint of the oil importers. Now, later and very recently, a new stream of thought, a new stream of literature is considering energy security more in economic terms. So I'm taking what Matteo just said about energy economics, providing with this scientific body some answers to the problem of the world. Energy security has become a problem of affordability, of price affordability for those parts of the world which have been deprived so far from the access to energy. So still a problem of energy security for the development of the emerging countries. So that is one further step. But another step that was taken in the economic literature, in the energy economic literature, is to look at the energy security from the viewpoint of the oil exporters. We shouldn't forget that we are in a multilateral world And multilateralism means having market rules and market developments for all market participants. So we are now overcoming the old view that we are energy poor countries that need to buy energy from oil-rich countries, and this is essentially a mercantile confrontation in the international market. Now there is a much more intertwined, essentially, view, and so also the security of supply for the oil exporters or the energy exporters, gas exporters, in the future, renewable energy exporters, of course, is a matter that is important for us to study as scientists, as economists. Why am I telling you this one with a lot of enthusiasm? Because now that Europe has launched ever since a long time ago the 2020 policy, and now renewed with the next generation and the Green Deal to achieve 55% of renewable energy in the year 2030, complete decarbonization later on, we are essentially considering that there is a new reshaping of the international energy market, which is not only a problem of money, a problem of finance, a problem of, profit for those who are producing or refining or extracting or consuming oil. It's a problem of ensuring to our world a sustainable path of development for the years to come. So my view that I would like to, share with you and to encourage you, the young researchers, to study, is to consider the concept of energy security with the tools of the economic analysis in terms of, say, return and risk or risk-return management, because the security of your energy is what allows you to have, if you are an oil importer or an energy importer or a renewable energy importer, to secure the necessary input for the well-being and the development of your economy. If you are an energy exporter, oil exporter, gas exporter, or renewable gas exporter, you are essentially contributing to the international trade development, and you deserve, that is my political economy view, you deserve a fair share of the international trade without any penalization. So consider for this, and then of course I'm shutting up, but consider for this the entire new revolution that could, we don't know if the engineers will be able to bring it to us, but the new revolution of hydrogen. Now hydrogen is coming back on the stage, and hydrogen, green hydrogen or blue hydrogen in the transition, green hydrogen for the long-term future, is another technological solution that adds to the equation of the energy mix and the energy supply, and therefore to the energy security, because we should consider that, again, we are in a multilateral world. Maybe I can even end with the wishes of Pope Francis. So also because Pope Francis, as you know, is addressing also the other religions. He has addressed the Muslim religion, he has addressed the Jewish religion, he has addressed the Asian, the other philosophical religions of the world. So I'm not making a religious statement, but when Pope Francis was saying we need to take care of our environment, we need to be brothers all, and brothers all, to consider how to care for the environment in which we are living, for the young generation, we need to look for a new economic development model. Then this is a challenge for us. I'm speaking first of all to Matteo or to Beppe or to Jimmy. For us professors, we have to teach to our students how to be protagonists of their future world, with the help of the important, of course, politicians and officers. So I'm considering Enrico Gibelleri as a paradigm, of those who can help us to get the political needs to be transformed into economic thinking and economic models for the future of our world. So this is the best wish I think I can give to our conference. which of course is successful. It has been successful when we were in Milan already with Matteo with the previous edition. It will be again when we will be in presence in the beautiful campus, the renewed new campus of Bocconi University, which is now, you know, a splendor of new architecture, of university architecture. In the meantime, we keep the light on and we keep the passion on for our research. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Carlo Andrea. Now I ask Aiee Gerbetti, that I already said that is the president of the Italian Association of Energy Economists Scientific Committee and Conference Scientific Committee Chair. Aiee, your experience is now a long experience in the activity of our association. Then you can give us your proposal, your opinions about what is happening now, this difficult period we are living.
Thank you very much. I'll try to give a global overview, if I can say this. After a difficult period, seems like now we're having some good news. As you all know, in Europe, in a few weeks, it will arrive the COVID-19 vaccine. Joe Biden, the elected president of the United States, he promised to sign the Paris Agreement. Seems like solutions are coming for the two common problems, the immediate COVID pandemic and the medium long-term climate change issue. However, I believe that things are unfortunately a little bit different, and that after a year in which almost everything has been suspended, now the difficult part begins. Let's start with the United States. Biden will certainly have more cordial relationships with Europe than those of his predecessor. But if someone thinks that a common path between US and EU is about to begin on energy, they might be wrong. This because Biden was vice president when Obama chose to disengage with the Middle East, leaving Europe for the first time to deal directly with the producing countries, oil-producing countries, and with the Maghreb area. And this happened for the first time since the Second World War. Secondly, the former Democratic president has pledged to revitalize his internal crude oil production, transforming US from an energy importer to a net exporter in a few years. So, without an immediate need for oil, the US confrontation with the oil-producing countries was, if we can say, less frenetic. Thirdly, although the first term presidency of former President Obama was born under the sign of environmentalist, Obama has given great development to shale gas, which is not exactly a green measure. Biden, I believe, will not deviate from this line and will continue to consider Europe certainly a commercial partner as well as a productive competitor. Let's get another chapter. At the end of this terrible year, the only country among the big economies which will see its GDP grow is China. For almost 50 years, probably since Nixon's visit in 1972 in the West countries has seen China as a large market ready to blossom, as a market to grow by recognizing to China the status of a developing countries with all the related advantages. China was considered and was, I mean, the Western countries were sure that when China had given up the claws of communism, would have become a great market for the European goods absorption. we all were wrong on this issue. We welcome China into the WTO, even though it has never been really a market economy. And we consider, we contributed to its growth, even if its worker did not have the rights that we recognize to ours. And we imported and still do its goods, even if they were manufactured with high emissive energy. So we were available because we were confident that its development would have been in our advantage too. But we were wrong. We were wrong to think China as the outlet market for European products. For Chinese products, Europe is the market to penetrate. Let's move on to Russia. In recent days, despite thousands of controversies fueled by virologists who claimed excessive haste, we have witnessed the first vaccination of the Russian response to the COVID pandemic. They called their vaccine Sputnik. Perhaps some of you will remember that Sputnik was the first satellite launched into orbit, and that it gave birth to that competition with the United States that went down in history as the space race. I knew that you could do politics with vaccine. Remember just what happens with the Trump presidency last month of his presidency. But I didn't believe that you could do politics with such irony. So, coming to Europe, despite the EU regulation which aim at the reduction of energy dependence from Russia, Russia is still the fuel distributor of Europe. It is the same for all Europe, but some countries suffer Russia's political influence with a greater sensitivity. Furthermore, many countries, especially from the former Soviet bloc, whose economy is still fueled by fossil fuels, suffer from the ambitious decarbonization programs that the westernmost countries, the liberal part of the European Union, is supporting. So we have seen what happens in the last few days when EU objectives have been revised upwards. So the question is, will Russia, the world's largest gas producer and the second largest oil producer, let its European customers easily support their economy with wind turbines and photovoltaic panels? It is a difficult it is a difficult question, and also it is difficult to know how the answer will materialize. Finally, we have the British Thorny issue. In my imagination, Europe is transformed into a bird's eye of the Colosseum, Brandenburg Gate, Eiffel Tower, and the Big Ben. But that's no longer the case. The UK has become a competitor at the center of the European heart. Britain, seeing itself downgraded economically, will fight, as it has always do in its history, and will do so with pride, for sure. It will fight for the fishing area in the Channel, as well as for the wind farms in the North Sea, and maybe with no more environmental constraints, will procure gas from US and oil from Russia, or vice versa. In the course of history, first Romans, then the French with Napoleon, finally the Germans in the Second World War understood that the British islanders are very tough nut to crack. Now we come to the EU energy security. So the game is starting now, and we have to fight as the EU in two fronts. One, the internal front and the external one. On the domestic front, it is absolutely necessary that there is a growing energy integration, both at the level of infrastructure and objectives. For this, an enormous communication effort will have to be made. We cannot leave national governments alone to inform the population of the decarbonization advantages, because the disadvantages of non-decarbonization and climate change will be evident in the long term, rather than the advantages of decarbonization. It is very, very difficult to communicate the disadvantage of inaction. Therefore, without a shared vision of Europe's people, the risk lays if we think that the first European defection occurred for immigration policies, just think about Brexit, the next one could happen for the cost of the energy transition. Let's remember what happens also in Paris with the yellow jackets. On the external front, EU should expand its areas of influence, as it is already doing with the Energy Union, to manage cross-border trade, safety, and in reliable conditions. And secondly, EU should behave more and more for energy purchases as a single negotiator, a single subject with a united vision. By allowing individual countries to negotiate their own supplies, exposes them to less bargain strength and competition with other European countries, crumbling this way the compactness of the European design. If EU member states continue to compete with each other for lucrative supplies from Libya, Egypt, and elsewhere, there will be no European voice in the global energy market, and ambitious decarbonization programs will remain just funds for industrial sectors without a real impact on global emissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiee, for your overview on the international vision of future energy and the policy of the main actors in the world for the energy sectors. I think that your opinion on the European attitude is not completely positive. You have some doubts on the ability of Europe to find a common line to develop the policy and energy policy. I think, if I understood your opinion.
You say to me?
Yes.
I believe in a stronger Europe, in a more unique vision between the member states, more collaboration to count as a continent, as a region, because otherwise the single countries to have, let's say, energy, French energy, Italian energy, German energy, I mean, we do not count, we count nothing, let's say, alone as countries. We should put all the efforts together and be as a single act, as a single nation, in order to count, because we have US, which is big and strong, as we have China, we have Russia, and we have the North African countries, which are rich in energy. So we should put our effort together, all European countries, yes.
Okay, thank you, Aiee. Perhaps later, when Enrico Gibellieri will make his presentation, he can give his opinion on this point. Now I ask Iveta Geramsichuk that has, I think, an experience and sorry, Yes, an experience that I think is based on the situation of country less advanced in the energy sector. She can give us some information about the activity of the International Institute for Sustainable Development and for its personal experience. Iveta.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation to present to this assembly. My presentation is focusing on the Energy Policy Tracker, which is both a network and a database on recovery measures which are pertinent to energy production and consumption. That's a collaboration between a number of independent expert organizations. Some of them are universities, some of them are NGOs and think tanks like ISD. We are very pleased that in this respect, we are collaborating with Bocconi SDA as a partner for Italy, and Legambiente is a second partner for Italy in collecting and analyzing this information. So we came together as a group of research organizations based on our previous experience of tracking fossil fuel subsidies and public finance across the world. We knew and anticipated that this recovery will be about getting the balance right between support from governments to fossil fuel intensive sectors versus green, clean energy sectors. And from experience, again, we knew that countries very readily speak about their clean energy measures. Sometimes there is a little bit of greenwashing, but there is not enough transparency on fossil fuel financial flows. So unfortunately, this hypothesis so far has been confirmed by our findings. But I agree with Agime and previous speakers that there is a silver lining, that there is European Green New Deal. And maybe next year we'll see the balance changing. So you can all check the database, which is available online at energypolicytracker.org. We started with G20 countries, so all G20 countries are covered, but there are 9 more countries which we added, and we'll continue integration of more countries in the next year, hopefully adding more countries in Africa and Latin America. And you can see that the balance so far is in favor of fossil fuel intensive sectors. I will talk a little bit more about this using the example of the G20. Again, you can see it on the screen, but you can also see it online, where you will be able to actually look at policies measure by measure, download the spreadsheet for your analysis. So we look at 4 main sectors. We look at resource extraction. We look at power generation. We look at mobility, which is a huge kind of chunk of money at the moment because it includes airline bailouts. And then there is also buildings as an energy intensive sector. So we preferred not to use the term green or gray, sustainable, unsustainable. So we just talk about all policies supporting either fossil fuels or clean energy. And then fossil fuels can be supported unconditionally, so with no strings attached, business as usual, or conditionally. For instance, we have seen conditional bailouts of Air France or Austrian Airlines, which are linked to the requirement by the government to reduce their emissions. At the same time, also there are different shades of green. So there is unconditional clean energy where emissions are saved and there are no negative implications for the environment, as in terms of energy efficiency, for instance, or green hydrogen, which was mentioned, or just generally wind and solar. Negative impacts on the environment are negligible. And there are conditional, like we put a lot of other measures that support clean energy, but require safeguards as conditional. Clean energy, for example, if we talk about electric vehicles, ultimately it also depends where the electricity is coming from, whether it's coming from a coal plant or whether it's coming from wind turbines. And then there is, of course, other energy, something that we are not able to disentangle, or nuclear energy. And the balance as of last week, so here we're updating our database weekly. The data is 9 of December. So you can see in the G20, 240 billion US dollars from the start of pandemics have been committed to fossil fuels, and about 160 billion was committed to clean energy. So still the balance is in favor of fossil fuels. So as I mentioned, there is a silver lining because the European Commission and European Parliament, European Council supported this large budget for the Next Generation EU, the Recovery Fund, and multi-annual financial framework. They said that 30% of it will be earmarked for climate measures, but in the tracker, actually, to add this information, we need to see specifically which sectors it goes to. It's all described in the methodology. So mostly these numbers have not been included yet because we don't see from all European member states budgets, how they are distributed. So just on the methodology, again, I'll say broadly how we classify the measures. Of course, it's a live exercise. We're trying to improve our methodology as we go. But generally, we talk about public money commitments in the broadest sense. So it's not just budget transfers, it's also hybrid mechanisms such as government-backed loans, loan guarantees, equity injections. We have seen that governments are extremely creative in this crisis with new hybrid measures. For example, even central banks were buying bonds of energy companies in a number of countries, and that's basically monetary institutions performing a fiscal function. There are also investments by state-owned enterprises, which play a big role in large emerging economies. As I said, so we focus on 4 sectors: mobility, buildings, resources, and power. In general, these numbers account for something like 3 to 5% of the total stimulus. As I said, so a lot of initial packages went to airlines. So 3/4 of all measures actually look at mobility, whether it was fossil fuel conditional or unconditional. But then this category also includes investments into airlines, airports, highways, and automobile manufacturing. So we capture only new approved or amended policies. Of course, there are a lot of measures which are not quantified at all, so we cannot attach a price tag to them. There have been a lot of rollbacks, regulatory rollbacks on fossil fuel extraction, for instance, from the United States to Argentina. There have been also a lot of tax breaks. Some of them we cannot quantify, tax deferrals, holidays. So in reality, of course, government intervention into energy intensive sectors has been large, and what we capture in the database just shows some of the trends, but is not completely exhaustive. Here is how it looks by country. So of course, it depends on the size of the total stimulus. Here again, you can see US, because US has had the biggest stimulus so far, dominated by support to fossil fuels, followed by Germany, UK, France. So European countries already looking much greener. A lot of measures in China were green in the sense of clean conditional energy, but we don't claim to be comprehensive on China. There is also like subnational provincial level in China where there is still a lot of support going to fossil fuels. But China at the same time is basically emerging from the crisis, so their economy is functioning more or less on a normal basis now. In Italy, we noticed that, of course, most measures were economically neutral, so they didn't benefit one sector or the other. We captured here the Alitalia bailout, I think Matteo Di Castelnuovo and other Italian colleagues probably know this much better than I do, but compared to other countries, Italy looks here quite small. I'm going to wrap up soon, so I just wanted to mention several trends which we have seen over the course of the year. So first of all, of course, Matteo made a reference or comparison between the coronavirus crisis and the climate crisis. So, and it's been interesting to see that with the corona crisis, large amounts of money suddenly have been made available. And for the climate, it has never happened. So the ultimate conclusion is that when there is political will, there is a way. So governments will find money. So that probably testifies, unfortunately, to the lack of political will still to act on climate. Also, the countries that had some kind of blueprint or green print for recovery were able to use it in response to the crisis quite rapidly. The example here, of course, is the EU Green Deal, but also South Korea had, even last year, they had the platform of Korean New Green Deal as an election platform for the winning political party. In the countries where they didn't have such a plan, unfortunately, they were not able to green policies as fast. And they're still kind of, for example, Canada trying to design these green recovery policies. As I mentioned, governments have been quite creative in the response. We have seen a lot of new policies and tools emerging. there is hope for more greening in the EU, but also maybe in other countries just with time, as countries have more time to develop their policies. And then this conditionality of government support to fossil fuels has been really a new trend, more massive than, let's say, in the previous crisis 12 years ago, when we had the big recession. So we have seen some measures here in the airline and car sector. However, the devil is always in the detail of implementation. So it's a policy innovation in the right direction, but we still have to see like what comes out of this conditionality and whether these companies who received government support will be able to reduce their emissions. And by the way, the same applies to blue hydrogen or to some other measures related to CCS, CCUS in the fossil fuel sector, because this support is going still to the oil, gas, and coal companies instead of, let's say, going to renewable energy companies. So I would invite everyone to have a look at the website. There is a search engine. As I said, you can download this data. You can relabel it if you don't agree with our classifications, if you have questions about methodology. We will continue updating it in the new year as well. It usually happens every Wednesday. We have a bi-weekly newsletter you can subscribe to, which is led by the Columbia University. We're going to add more countries, and like the next big update of the website is going to be adding information on loan and loan guarantees by multilateral development banks. We are open to collaborations, and that's how we started working with SDA Bocconi, which we are very happy about, and we'll see how the next year proceeds, but we do think collectively that adding more transparency on recovery measures helps us to achieve better policies and ultimately make a dent on policies and cut emissions. That's all from me. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you, Iveta. Thank you very much also for the information, the data show in your presentation. Some data are really also difficult to understand how some countries are so involved also in the sustain fossil fuels. I read that last weeks that some countries like India, like Emirates are investing, for instance, to doubling their production, their capacity of production of the refining production. But it can easier to understand because we are in a transition phase, and for that country perhaps it's normal to invest also in fossil fuels. It's more difficult to understand when this important investment are in countries that are more advanced also in the clean energies and toward the decarbonization. There are some questions for Iveta. There are other. No? Well, we go on, and I ask Enrico Gibellieri. You can hear me, Enrico?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Enrico.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important symposium. You know, although I am going to introduce a mixed political and technical presentation, I have been very much, you know, listening to the other intervention, I would like also to speak about policy, but I will stay on my presentation. Now, I would only say that the European Union is the only part of the world that has mandatory legislation against climate change for more than 10 years. For the production of materials in Europe, we must buy emission rights. No other part of the world have the same, duty. I'm speaking about the so-called resource and energy intensive industries that are responsible for the 25% of the CO2 emission. And these industries are the ones that are more affected by the European policy, ETS, emission trading system, I already said, but the Green Deal nowadays, now also the Recovery Fund and also other European legislation with very clear targets. Last week, the Council raised the reduction of CO2 and other greenhouse gas reduction in 2030 from 40 to 55%. But I cannot describe what each sector is doing to fulfill these objectives. And I will speak about steel as an example. You saw that in the first slide, you see three examples: was cement, steel, and plastic. You see, from 1990 to 2018, the emission rises 3 times, about for each of the 3 sectors. But you see the difference between them, because you see steel is produced 67% from primary raw materials like iron ore, while 33% is produced by scrap, recycled scrap. And this is already a way to reduce energy consumption. For example, in Italy, the production of steel is 80% produced by electric energy, and this is a very important point. In the second slide, speaking about steel, we see that steel is a very important material because it's not important per se, but also because is the input, the material that is the input of the most important value chain. In the picture, you can see the various sectors that automotive, buildings, mechanical engineering, and so on. But steel is also important for the development of the sustainable economy, in particular the production of renewable energies and wind energy and solar energy and so on. Then the steel is can be indefinitely recycled 100%, and you see that 1/3 of the world steel production is coming from the recycling of scrap. And steel is used to cooperate at the European level in research and innovation. The first community in Europe has been the European Coal and Steel Community, expired in 2002, has been the last president, and we are used to work together. It's a contradiction because, companies that are competing on the market are able to work together to develop knowledge, research, and innovation for the use of all of them, naturally then competing on the market in the domestic international market. Steel is very much committed also in the circular economy. And I have also in the next slide, this slide, to speak a few words about the STEP. STEP is the European Steel Technology Platform. In Europe, there exists over 40 technology platforms. Most of them are sectorial technology platforms like STEP. I have been participating from the beginning of this technology platform. I have been also the deputy president of the platform for a certain time. And then this platform is at the beginning of the development of the strategic research agenda, where all the parties involved, the company, but also users, the European Commission, and also the plant constructor are involved in the definition of the strategic research agenda that has been edited the last version 2017 and then revised from some of its parts, in particular those on smart factory and circular economy, due to the change also in the general situation. Going to the next slide, you still in the discussion with the European institution, but in particular with the Commission, reached an agreement to have for the first time, and this is a very new thing for the next European framework program for research and innovation that will name it the Horizon Europe. Still will have its own private-public partnership that the name is Clean Steel Partnership. And the purpose of this partnership is to accompany with research and innovation the steel sector towards the total decarbonization of the production processes. You see in this slide some elements. Why steel? Because steel, I said before, is an important, and it will function like an icebreaker also for other sectors that are also them on the path for the decarbonization of their processes. I'm thinking to the chemical industry, cement, paper, glass, ceramics, not ferrous metals, and so on. Naturally, to make research, you need funds. And in this PPP, Clean Steel Partnership, the budget will be 1.4 billion euro for the 7 years of the validity of the Horizon Europe. And of this budget will come 50% from industry and 50% from public funds like Horizon Europe, the European Community for Coal and Steel assets coming from the former treaty. But the final result of this activity will be high TRL large-scale demonstrators. I think you are familiar with the TRL indicator. The TRL is the technology readiness level, is a scale going from 0 to 9. 0 is the starting point. Research is around 5. Pilot plants and demonstrators is 7, 8. And the objective of this will be, this result will be measured, it will be not only declaration, but will be a real result, hopefully, naturally. And then this will accelerate the transformation of the EU steel industry towards carbon neutrality. Please, next slide. And how we can reach with this PPP Clean Steel Partnership? The steel is important, but we have 3 main paths. The one is the carbon direct avoidance. This means that we are going to replace carbon as a whole as the reducing of iron ore with other material. With other gases, we will say something after. Then we have another part that is called smart carbon usage. It's an intermediate way to reduce CO2 on the actual technologies, waiting for the breakthrough one in order to solve the source, the problem. And then we have the circular economy, and also the, industrial symbiosis in which we can exchange with other sector material that for the steel industry can be a waste, but for other a secondary raw material. And then to do this, we have 6 areas of intervention where we integrate the building blocks that are listed on the bottom on the right of the slide, where we have gas injection, metal oxide reduction, and so on and so on. And then on the table, you have on the right on the top, we have the circular economy on the top, where we not only we should increase the amount of steel recycled, both in the integrated steel production route, starting from raw material, but also on the other route, on the electrical furnaces. This will be a contribution of the sector to the decarbonization. Then in the technologies that are under smart carbon usage, we have process integration with reducing the carbon with the actual technologies, and the carbon valorization through a carbon capture and use or storage. And naturally, we should transform CO2 in chemical products like fuels, ethanol, and some other products. We have already in Europe pilot plans on this technology, but they will be further developed. This is the other slide. So then the deliverables of this Clean Steel Partnership could be develop lean CO2 technology, test technology at large scale and high TRL, because new technology should be also reliable and full scale, because we cannot invest in processes that are not reliable and as a technology and as a return on investment also. Technology requires also reduce CO2 emission from the steel production up to 80–90% on the compared with the emission on 90 levels on 2050, ultimately leading to carbon neutrality while preserving the competitiveness of the EU steel sector. This is a real problem in Europe. This means that we should arrive to this very important result alive, because in the same time we are investing, making research, making innovation, we should compete with other producers outside Europe where there are no mandatory legislation. Then they are very aggressive in the sector of steel with the steel products on the European market. We have always problems. Mainly after that in the United States, Trump in practice impose tariffs outside of the WTO rules, only looking to national security. Ensure coordinated sustainable approach across stakeholders, technologies, production routes, and countries. With this means cooperation between and among different interests and parties. Leverage private investment. We think that with this investment in this PPP, other research and innovation activities could be induced. Provide the needed support to accelerate demonstration process. At the end of the PPP time, we will have 2 demonstrators leading to 50% CO2 reduction by 2027 and 2 demonstrators leading to 80% CO2 reduction in 2034. Then go ahead. With these results, we plan to use also other possible financial sources like the Innovation Fund. The Innovation Fund is coming from the ETS revenue, and part of them we will invest in research and innovation. And we think that with the activity on the PPP Clean Steel Partners, we can introduce 6 large-scale projects responded to the first call, this innovation fund, with the objective to reduce of 25% to 45% CO2 by 2025-2030. Then we have also this IPCEI, that is an important project of common European interest. And then we should, and we think 33 steel projects can be introduced under this umbrella, with the objective of reduce 33 million tons CO2 per year by 2030. And then requirement we need for this 0.6 to 2.2 billion euro, million tons of hydrogen. And I was thinking to this when Professor Bollino was speaking at the beginning of the meeting, and 12 terawatt hour per year of energy. You know, has been estimated that for the full decarbonization only of the steel sector, we need the actual energy consumption of Germany. This to give you an idea of the challenge we are confronted with the decarbonization of the resource and energy and energy intensive steel industry. Naturally, the investment needs are 26 billion divided between capital expenditure and operational expenditure. And then we have also had the requirements to have access to finance, affordable CO2 low energy. Naturally, if we need hydrogen, we need hydrogen produced with low carbon energy. Market for green steel, this means that the steel produced with low CO2 emission must be preferred in the public procurement, and for the big programs for infrastructure in Europe at least, because you know this should be also taken into account. The full carbon leakage prevention. This means that we should oppose to the delocalization of the steel production outside Europe. That we have already example of the delocalization of investment on steel industry, but not outside Europe, also from European steel producers. Then we should have also the level playing field on the global market. This is a very important thing. With the Professor Aiee Gerberti, we did together an opinion in the European Economic and Social Committee for a specific measure, the border adjustment measure on imports of steel, but also other materials and products in the European market. Just not to protect, but just to have the level playing field for our industry. Then in the last slide, that is very complicated, but just to have a summary. But you see, you will have in this Clean Steel Partnership three stages. The immediate stage starting from 2001, the short term, the quick evolution and the mid-term up to 2027, and then the final, the breakthrough, the long term in 2034. We have six areas of intervention. The first one is smart carbon usage, that with the capture and storage of CO2, and then we have another block of areas of intervention of the smart carbon usage, but starting we develop alternative process to the blast furnace, for example, the metal reduction processes, or substitution of coal with biomass polymers, or gas injection. There are also now example of injection of hydrogen in the blast furnace to replace part of the coke, part of the carbon in the blast furnace to reduce iron ore. And then in each block, in each step, we will involve the building blocks. For example, in the first one, we will involve the building block of CO2 neutral iron ore reduction, adjustment of today production, CO2 capture and storage of specific circular economy. You see, in the time we are developing this demonstrator, I was speaking in the first part of my presentation, but just to be quick, at the end, we have the breakthrough technology where all the building blocks will be, in a certain way, utilized. So we have on the far right of the slide, you can see the budget of this PPP, Clean Steel Partnership, the resource, the budget allocation, but also the result we are committed to, that are still technology completed, integrated, and demonstrated, ready for deployment, minus 50% CO2 from 2007, minus 19% CO2 from 2030. Target for steel industry, minus 15 million tons CO2 per year 2030, CO2 neutral in 2050. With also a leverage of fourth research for about 500 million euro, and then resource efficiency, competitiveness, and job and skill. I put this in the end, but we are now in the steel, but also in other sectors, development, the new skill needed for the future energy and resource and energy intensive industry, the industry for the future. Industry is very much committed to this objective, although in the past they were a little resistant to this policy in Europe. But we are now, and the steel in particular, very much committed. We need energy, we need secure energy, and energy produced with renewable means. This is what I would like. I try to explain to you, and I thank again you, and I hope that you understood at least a little that what I tried to say, that because they're not always very clear, because the matter is very also complex and complicated. Thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Rico. You analyze the challenges from the side of big consumers, industrial consumers, and specifically the sector of steel sector. That is one of the main sectors that are involved in the next change. I don't know if there are questions for Enrico. Agime, do you have any questions?
If I can add something, because I very much follow this issue, I would like just to say that we should pay very much attention to all these activities that are going on the steel sector, because steel is the thermometer of our economy, especially in EU.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Now, Feridun Sioshansi, I hope to not make mistake in the pronunciation of your name, Feridun. Okay. Your presentation is the U.S. energy and environmental policy under the Biden administration. Some assessment on the future policy of the United States, as we already listening in the Agime presentation, from an external observer. We wait for you that are an internal observer, what you think about it.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? I'm very pleased to be with you this morning. It's early in San Francisco. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see the slide. Put the slide together. You must show one. You start for the first? Yes, okay.
Anyway, thank you very much for including me on the program. I am going to talk a little bit about the change from Trump to Biden. And I think the Biden is not in office yet. He's made some plans, but it still remains to be seen what he exactly can deliver. But we can certainly talk about the change that is about to take place, and I will probably talk more about what we suffered under Trump rather than what we expect to get from Biden. And so to put things in perspective, and I also understand that there's been quite a few presentations, and some of the audience is probably getting too much already. So I won't talk for very long, but I just want to put the US election and politics a little bit in perspective. I think most of you have probably follow it as much as we do in the US. The election, as you know, was on the 3rd of November, and some of us thought that the result would be more clear, shall we say. We can now say that Trump was defeated, although he doesn't quite accept it. But the sad part is that he was not, in my opinion, repudiated. He got 75 million votes or something like that. And a recent poll of people that voted for him shows that something like 3/4 do not trust or do not believe the results of the election. So that kind of tells you how difficult the situation is and will be. Let's see, my slides sort of froze right now. That's not good usually. How do I get out of here?
Just press OK. Just press invio.
Okay, let's see. When the technical part doesn't work, it's not usually a good sign, but let me see. Somebody on your side has the copy of slides, right? Is that possible that you, for some reason, mine doesn't show up now? If not, I can just continue without the slides. Is someone trying on your end?
Sorry, I don't have your slides.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because when I hit on this,
I don't know if Anka have
okay,
your slide.
I have sent it to Anka, but when I tried to share it, it says someone else is sharing it. Let me try again. Here we go. Does it show? No. Okay, if it doesn't work, I'll just.
We see your slides.
You see my slides. That's good.
Yes.
Good.
So just click in the first one.
It's frozen on my screen, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's
F5, maybe you can do it. F5. To see full screen.
F5. No, this is.
Or just go down, and you have this sign here like a, let's say, champagne glass. Oh, there, okay.
But see, there's a circle going around, so it's frozen for some reason. Okay, I will just give my brief comments without the benefit of the slides. I don't think they're terribly complicated. So with apologies, let's just proceed. The sad part about what's going on, frankly, is that as I mentioned, we have a new president taking office on the 20th of January, where with significant number of people that voted for Trump refusing to accept the results of the election. So it's somewhat complicated, makes the job of the new president complicated when you have 75 million unhappy people. 75% of them do not even trust the results of the election. So let's start with that as the background. And I would like to just basically say three things about the in my comments today. The first one is what is the Trump's legacy? What did Trump do in his presidency? Secondly, I will say a little bit about what happened during the last 4 years, because the federal government was marching in one direction and a number of states, including California and a number of the so-called blue states, were marching in the opposite direction. And then say a few comments about Biden without having the slides present.
Fredo, now we have your slides.
Okay.
If you want, I can show which one. The first.
Well, if you can, I cannot see it on the screen, but if you can show me, I see the faces on the screen, but not the slides. If it's possible, I would go to number 5.
Number 5.
Ok, devi
Which
togliere.
is Trump's main objectives.
Agime, you must
Stop your
stop your.
condividation.
So what happened, just to understand what the difficulties and challenges are moving forward.
Agime, I explained to Agime.
Ok.
Okay.
The first thing that President Trump did when he took office, okay, that's good. Excellent. All right. So can we go to number 5? Okay. Please forward to number 5.
Yes.
This is number 5.
Here it is. This is it. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So first thing he did was basically he tried his best to obliterate Obama's legacy. Anything that he had done on energy and environment, Trump essentially undid very early in his term. It was just dramatic. I mean, you could see that if it was A, it became B. If it was C, it became D. I mean, everything totally different. Second, he put some hostile people in the 3 most important agencies that oversee the environment and energy policy in the US. And those 3 agencies are EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, DOE, which is the Department of Energy, and DOI, which is the Department of Interior. So he looked for people that were hostile to these agencies and put them in charge. So it's like putting Al Capone to be the head of the police, or putting the fox to watch the chicken. He made the worst possible choices in these 3 critical departments which are looking after energy and environment. The third, of course, which everyone realized, he pulled out of the important Paris Accord. And now, of course, Biden promises to get us back in on the first day in office. So 20th of January, hopefully US will be back, and this is very important. And the third is what I consider, you know, I'm not a Trump fan, so maybe my comments are a bit biased, but he just basically, he ran his policy and rhetoric on alternative facts, which whatever he thought was, for example, he talked about clean, beautiful coal. He was hostile towards renewables. He removed and reduced efficiency standards for appliances and cars and things like that. He did everything essentially to undo what Obama was trying to do to help with energy and environment. So I'll go through this rather quickly. If you can move on to the next slide. And let's move on. This is just his stand on the coal. Next slide, please. As you can see, early in his administration in March, one of the first executive orders that he signed, which he's showing in the slide, was essentially to rescind the Clean Air Plan, which Obama had passed to reduce emission from coal-fired plants. You see his vice president and his Secretary of Energy and Secretary of Interior and the first administrator EPA, many of whom have been either fired or left, which is very typical of his administration. So he told the coal miners that, fellas, you're back to work because I'm going to remove and reduce any regulation to do with emissions, and you don't have to worry about it. Next slide is what I mentioned. This is his first administrator was Scott Pruitt. So he put a man in charge of EPA who had previously sued the EPA 14 times before the Supreme Court and so forth, trying to, you know, reduce and remove its power. Next slide shows the Rick Perry, which was his first Secretary of Energy. He's out of office now. He was the man who said if he was elected president, he would eliminate Department of Energy. He had no use for anything coming out of Department of Energy. Next slide is basically, you know, US government owns lots of land, which it can lease or not lease to mining and drilling and fracking. Some of these are beautiful landscape that you can see here. And the next slide was his appointee to the Department of Interior, who's also out. His name is Ryan Zinke, and his view was, you know, what are the public lands for if they're not for exploitation? And next slide basically shows again these characters. You know, Scott Pruitt from right to left, Rick Perry, president and vice president, and Ryan Zinke. So the cast of characters, the five most important people essentially running the energy and environment, were all hostile to energy and environment. So guess what? We end up with a rather dismal situation. Next slide, of course, is the decision that he pulled US out of the climate change. And the next slide shows that despite what he did, which is truly amazing, is after 150 years or so, renewables, again, for the first time, actually exceeded generation of coal for the first time in many centuries. So despite everything that Trump and his colleagues were trying to do, the market trends, the economics of renewables were so overwhelming that despite all these efforts, renewables, in fact, are now the largest source of generation in the US, which is truly amazing. So if you can see that if these trends continue under Biden, which I expect they would, you can see that the renewables will continue to grow exponentially and coal would essentially vanish. So the second point that I want to make very briefly, next slide please, is what I mentioned, that what happened during the Trump administration, which I think will improve now, is that we have states, blue states like California, where I come from, and for the last 4 years, there was a clash between the federal government and many of these states. And this one, of course, is the former governor, Jerry Brown, and he ran an entirely different agenda than what was going on in the federal government. Next slide shows what happened. On 1st of June, 2017, Trump announced that he was pulling the US out of the Paris Accord. Barely a week after, Brown visits Peking or Beijing and visits with the Chinese president to talk about climate change, as you can see in the next slide. During that week where this meeting was taking place, the Secretary of Energy, Rick Perry, was also in Beijing, and he wanted to meet with the president of China, and he refused to meet with him, which is interesting. So Secretary of Energy is in Beijing, wants to meet with the president of China, and he refuses to meet him, while he makes time available to meet with Jerry Brown. Next slide is also very symbolic. It shows that this is the president of, I believe, Azerbaijan, and he was coming to the US to announce that he was going to do all he can to join the Paris Accord. And his plan was to visit Washington. But people told him in Washington, nobody's interested in this topic. If you want to talk about climate change, the place to go is California. Go talk with Jerry Brown. So he signed a memorandum of understanding with Jerry Brown, who also in this slide shows that he extended the California's cap and trade, and he invited the former governor Schwarzenegger to in the signing ceremony. And the next slide shows the current governor of California. This is with yours truly. This is Gavin Newsom. He's also a very green young man, and he has some ambitions for perhaps running for president. So you might see him in the years to come. He's an ambitious young Democrat and very green. So I would expect that California will continue to move ahead with its policies. The next slide really kind of shows you a visual image of what I was talking about, the bifurcation of federal versus state. The states that are shown in blue are states that have ambitious climate or renewable targets. California and Hawaii, for example, and a number of others have 100% renewable targets, whereas the federal government doesn't have any targets, at least at this point. Now, Biden has promised to change that, and so we may have a federal standard as the European Union has. But under Trump, this was kind of bizarre because some states had 100% renewable targets, and some states, that the ones that are not shown in color, didn't have any standards and couldn't care less about renewables or climate and things like that. So, conscious of time, let me just move on. Biden, what can we expect from Biden? I think there's good news, the fact that he's replacing Trump. I think 4 more years of Trump would have been the end of climate environment in the US. So it's certainly good to see that at least we have a fresh face. Now he's 78. I don't think he would be running 4 years from now. So it's kind of debatable what might happen when he's having a second term in office for a 78-year-old man would be rather challenging. He has appointed John Kerry to be his environmental czar. As you remember, John Kerry was the one who was instrumental in the Paris Accord and signed on the behalf of the US. So I think that's a good sign. The next slide, I think, shows some of the challenges. And the challenges are basically, Republican versus Democrats. We have the US Senate still most likely controlled by Republicans. And even within the Democratic Party, you have the center part of the Democratic Party and those who are more to the left. So there's some tension even within the Democratic Party as to where things go. As far as Biden's priorities, I think the pandemic is first, the economy and jobs are second, climate, I think, is high on his agenda. Hopefully he will restore many of these relationships with the rest of the world. But he has to do a lot in the 2 years because we have a midterm election in 2 years and then we have another election in 4 years. So politicians in the US as in Europe are always looking at the next election. And I think the point that I would say probably is most important on the climate issue, which people talked about before me. Trump, when you mentioned climate change, Trump would say hoax. He didn't believe in it and he dismissed it. Biden looks at climate as an opportunity to create jobs in the renewable sector. So their views are diametrically opposed. One didn't believe in it, didn't do anything about it. One actually believes in it and thinks it's going to help him create jobs and restore the economy. The next and the last slide, I think, is some of the challenge which I already talked about. He has to not only deal with a hostile Senate, which is most likely in the Republican hands, but he also has to deal with the left wing of the Democratic Party, who are far more, you might say, green and clean than he is. Hard to believe, but so he has to balance between people who don't want anything done with the climate and people who want a lot more done to climate that he's comfortable with. So we still have to wait and see what happens. And with that, I will conclude because I understand we're a bit over time, but I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you again for inviting me to make a few comments about the US politics and at least my biased views on the topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Feridun. Before to ask the other participant to the opening session, I have a question for you, Feridun. The list of priorities that you mentioned in your slide show the first point, the second point, economy, the third, job. I ask you, how this priority can influence the Biden administration decision on energy? Because for the same reasons, at least this is the feeling I have, was the base of the Trump decision for supporting fossil fuels, for instance.
Well, I think with the vaccine around the corner, as other people mentioned, Biden has said that he wants to have 100 million people vaccinated within the first 2 months of his administration. So there's good signs at the end of the tunnel. I think once there's some degree of normalcy, the pandemic has killed 300,000 people in the US. It's just an astonishing number. So that is certainly the first priority, but that goes with jobs. Once he has a solution to the pandemic, I think he can begin to restore the economy and the confidence and maybe unite the country. All of these are very complicated. So in terms of priority, I think it's clear that he wants to show that he has the pandemic under control and he can restore confidence in the economy. The US economy is strong. I think once we have the vaccination under control, the good times will return. And then he can focus on these other issues such as climate and restore relations with Europe and rest of the world. So I am very optimistic. I think he has an ambitious agenda and he has made some, if you look at his platform, he's made lots of promises about carbon neutrality by, in the electric sector by 2035, which is very ambitious, and a number of things like that. So to what extent he can deliver, I think we have to wait and see.
I would like to say something on this point.
Please.
Now, concerning the protection of coal miners, in Europe we have still coal mines, in particular in Poland, Czech Republic, something in Germany, but in the most part of them have been closed because the most part of them were subsidized. They were not able to stay on the market without subsidies. And now we are a platform in Europe that is the platform for the coal region in transition that, provide policies for workers redundant for the closing of mines in the perspective in order to protect them with other workers, with other possibility or with appropriate policy. We had already in Europe an experience in the 80s where the most part of coal mines were closed with a very specific problem. We passed our experience to China also because they have some not similar problem, but we have experience to manage the closure of coal mines and at the same time to provide alternatives for the local community. This is a crucial point, I think, also for the United States.
Yes, it is. It's, but you got to remember, it's the coal mining industry in the U.S. is heavily automated. I think the number of miners in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken, is something like 60,000 people. It's a very, you can give them a generous retirement package and send them all to Hawaii and give them a house and pension, and it will cost relatively little for a large country of 300 million. It's a political issue more than it is an economic issue, I think. It's kind of like fishing, the argument between the EU and England about fishing rights. The fishing industry in UK is less than 1% of GDP, and yet it's a political issue. It's an important constituency that both sides want to support, but it's not a big economic issue. So closing of the mines for a country the size of US and finding something for the miners to do is not an overwhelming issue, to be honest.
But we should also think not only to the people directly involved in the coal mines, but also to local community in terms of perspective for young generation to keep these people in the area of coal mines, because the risk is that they go out, they go elsewhere, and you have deserts. We have been confronted in Europe with many areas like Ruhr, Saar, Wales, and also other area, Luxembourg, France, some area in the 80s with this problem for the closure of coal mines. And now we have the same for other reasons, like the climate change problem, mainly in Poland and Czech Republic in particular.
Right. Right. No, you have a valid point, but I would say the counter argument is that, you know, to let young people to get into mining today is a mistake. We have to tell them, we have to train them to become operators of wind parks and install solar panels. Find something for the next century for them to do. You know, coal is the fuel of the industrial age, not the information age. So we have to make that transition. But I agree with you.
Okay.
Can I?
Other questions?
Yes, can I?
Aiee and Carlo Andrea. Aiee.
Thank you, Professor Sioshansi, for your presentation. It was very comprehensive, especially for us that we do not live in US. I have a question. I mean, during my work experience, I have noticed that US has a kind of difficulties to sign the climate change agreements, the world one, the global ones. Or if US sign them, the Congress does not ratify them. So this happens with the Kyoto Protocol, with Clinton, with Obama, and Trump did something very, how can I say, extreme, deleting the word climate change from the White House website. My question, it relates the fact that maybe instead of going alone, US, and trying to find its own way of solving this and dealing with climate change, maybe it can be a solution to join the forces with Europe and together fight for lowering the emissions. Because I believe, I think, I don't know, I would like to have your view. I think that maybe if EU and US join the forces together to set environmental standards for products, they can lead the global production and contribute to lower emissions.
Good point. I think you raised a very important point. And let me just point out, the Paris is not the Paris, it's called Paris Accord. We don't even call it a treaty, because for US to call something a treaty, it has to be ratified by the Senate. Obama didn't think that he would succeed. So he basically said, let's not call it a treaty or agreement, let's call it an accord. So he signed a deal without having the Senate's backing. Unfortunately, the Senate is still in the hands of predominantly Republicans, many of whom probably will not ratify. So we have this problem, you know, the president can do certain things, but if it's not legislated and officially is a law, it's easy to be overturned by the next president if he doesn't agree with it. So it's a problem. All I can tell you, but that, you know, that's part of the democracy we live in. We have these rural states, many of whom are not particularly interested in certain issues. You know, healthcare is another issue. So US is a strange country in many ways. You know, people in the East Coast and the West Coast, the blue states, tend to think more in line with many European countries on climate issues and other issues. People in rural center of America, it's a different country. So how does Biden bring this? You know, I don't know. He will join the Paris Accord, but God forbid if 4 years from now we have another non-believer, that person can, you know, pull the US back out of the agreement. So it's very difficult. It's, I don't know what the solution is. I think it's part of it is just education of, you know, why do we have people in America who are against healthcare? I mean, I have no answer for it. Why do people have issues with gun control? I don't understand. You know, on and on and on. It's one of those things. The mystery of American politics. or mysteries, I should say.
Yes.
Maybe next time you meet Joe Biden, maybe you can say that from Europe maybe can come some ideas
Well,
to collaborate.
There are good signs. As I said, the fact that he has already elected John Kerry to be his climate czar, and this is not a department, but it would be a very important post. So I think Kerry would probably, in the next 4 years at least, would lead this effort. So I think it's good signs.
Bene.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes. May I? Hello. First of all, I wanted to say hello, Perry. Nice seeing you on the other side of the Atlantic. This is Andrea. I have a very short question. Maybe you said and I missed it because of the poor connection. What about the U.S. Energy Information Administration? Now, I think is led by Linda Capuano, a PhD of Stanford. Is Biden going to change it? Or is it the power to change also the Aiee head, or is there a term he has to wait for doing this?
You know, I'm not 100% sure, but the president, you know, most of the agencies, whether it's departments or agencies like the Energy Information Administration, the top level jobs are political appointees, typically.
Yeah, they are under the spoil system, I know.
So if Biden doesn't like this person, he could easily change it. If the person is doing a good job, you know, that particular agency is supposed to be nonpartisan and not be Republican or Democratic. It's just in charge of data. So maybe that person will stay on the job.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much for your answer.
Good seeing you as well. I wish I was in Milan or Rome or somewhere we could catch up again.
We'll do. Don't worry. We'll do. I'll come to Stanford myself soon. Come on.
Last question, Feridun. How do you, in your presentation, you show also a slide with the Californian governor that is free, a green
Right.
governor. I ask you if the different conditions that are in the states, the different states, can influence or can make more difficult to the Biden administration to develop a policy more oriented toward the green?
Well, it's a good question. I think the short answer is that you understand the politics of EU. You know, the fact that you have 28 members or whatever number is today. Many people outside the US think US is one country. And I think one of the slides that show the map of the US clearly shows we have essentially an EU with 50 countries who have their own lots of different rules. And when it comes to energy and environment and climate, they make the decisions, not necessarily the federal government. Now, if you have a strong federal government that can pass legislation, that becomes the law of the land. So, but unfortunately, in the last, few decades, we haven't had too much unity at the national level. So that is one reason that lack of leadership at the federal level has led individual states to make up their own policies. So this would be in the EU equivalent would be that Germany would say they want to be carbon neutral by a certain year, and Poland says, no, we don't care. We don't have any restrictions on emissions. And if the EU at the central level is not strong enough, some of the member states could slack off and either have no policies or weak policies, or have policies but not implement them. And that's the reality in the US. So why do we have the disparities where I think some of it is economic, some of it is political. You know, the two coasts tend to be blue states. They tend to care about certain things. The middle of the country tends to be a different country. You know, how else can I put it? And so we have this constant friction. And the U.S. Constitution, you know, not to give you a lecture, but the U.S. Constitution was based on having friction between the federal government and states and between different agencies, the three branches of government. So you can see that. So, you know, the House may be democratically controlled and go along with Biden. The Senate may not. And then a lot of issues go to the court, and the court is, depending on who is sitting on the Supreme Court, could go one way or the other. So we have this complicated set of frictions between the branches of government, as well as between the federal government and the states, which creates these difficult challenges. So you need a strong leader with a strong mandate to make significant change and to bring the federal government and states in the same, to move along the same path. And we haven't had that for quite a few years now.
Okay, thank you, Freedom. There are other questions? No other question? Well, thank you to you, and I hope to see you next year in, I don't know if in Milan or in Rome, because we must decide where we going to make the next conference, this affiliate conference, affiliate conference. Thank you to all the participants to the opening sessions. From tomorrow, we start with the program, with the concurrent sessions and the plenary session tomorrow morning.
At 9 o'clock.
At 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, there is the first concurrent session, and following
The plenary?
the plenary at 10:40. Then the program go on for the rest of the day and for on Thursday up to the lunchtime. I think we finish the lunchtime. Then we have next day of work with our program. Thank you. I don't know if the participant to the open session will participate also to the next sessions. In any case, we had already good presence in the conference today. I don't know the number, but I think I saw.
At the moment?
How many? 13. Okay. We hope tomorrow we have other participants. Pardon?
At 9 o'clock.
At 9 o'clock.
For the start.
Okay. See you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Thank you again. See you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Grazie, Carlo. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Voi,
A
grazie.
great successful conference. Bye, Ghime. Bye-bye, Ferri.
Thank you.
Bye, Enrico. Bye-bye. Thank you.